Hello, willkommen, bienvenue, deja vu. This is take 2. We just had the machine crap out, but welcome to the Armist Inquisition episode 298 on Sunday, the 1st of October 2023. I'm Phil, and I'm incredibly stressed.
I'm Matt, and I'm not stressed.
And we're joined tonight by Robby Marx, artist, podcaster, and space-time pirate. Hi, Robby. Thanks for sticking around.
For 20 minutes.
Yeah, right? No, that's fine. That's fine.
So, how are you, Robby? Nice to see you for the first time.
Just relaxing, you know.
Don't you just hate it when technology goes wrong?
The Archons.
Is that who's fucking with me?
Yeah, the ghost in the machine. Mm-hmm. You gotta wonder.
Do you do digital art, Robby?
Yeah, pretty much not everything. I try to paint and draw as much as I can, but a lot of times I'm building stuff for press, so I have to build it for screen printing. So I'll essentially build the layers depending on if it's for a shirt or a poster or whatever the need is.
Are you familiar with the GIMP? I use something called the GIMP.
Yeah. Yep. Now, are you able to save those? That's the thing, because I played with GIMP a number of years ago, and I was not able to. You could only screenshot stuff. No, you could never save it.
Yeah, you can save it now, and you can convert it as well to PDF.
Oh, we're old hands, aren't we? I mean, we've got at least how many hours of GIMP experience do we have between us?
Oh, well, you've probably done like
10.
Upwards of 100 hours. I probably did 20 hours and produced 2 awful things basically from it.
Yeah, I'm a total Luddite when it comes to computers. I'm not into them at all, Robby. So I feel quite happy with how I've progressed so far with the GIMP.
Yeah. Now the GIMP is actually modeled after Photoshop.
Yeah.
And I've been in Photoshop since like the year it was released. And used to be able to buy it outright. Now it's a subscription service. It's I don't know. Everybody I know that's in the industry is a little peeved about the constant, pull from your bank account.
Funny how things are going like that, isn't it? Everything's moving to subscription.
Everything.
Yeah.
Like Microsoft Office.
I know,
is a subscription.
The 365 thing. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, they want you as a customer. They don't want you, it's the whole you will own nothing and be happy meme of the current communist push, Yeah,
well, there's a WEF article years ago talking about how you'll rent a spatula, man. It's like you won't even buy a spatula. If you need a spatula, this little drone will come and you'll rent it for the day for 50 credits,
Yeah, unless you've been talking bad on social media. Then they're not even going to allow you to. You have to use your fingers to flip your eggs. Like,
that's what I do anyway. I'd be fine.
You'd be fine.
Yeah. You not flip an egg with your fingers.
No, you filthy Scythian.
Right. Okay. Just me.
No.
Just me.
Are you into history, Robby?
Yeah, I'm a big history buff. I pretty much, basically just sit here in the country and make art and read books, old books, ancient books, modern books. But I read a lot of ancient history. Yeah.
How much I'm a big history fan. I love history, particularly ancient history. And I read a book. It was recommended to me by Kojak, Jack Allen, the Kojak podcast. And it was called, I think it was called The Phantom Dark Ages. And it was this sort of false history or phantom history hypothesis. Yep. Are you familiar with that?
I think that goes into the whole Anatoly Flamenco, I think is his name. that basically he's like an astrophysicist that went through and looked at all the moon cycles and tried to line them up with the events historically, and basically came to determine that there's about an 800-year period where they basically fabricated the history to write certain bloodlines out and other bloodlines in. Something
Yeah.
along those lines.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was something to do with the French dynasties. There was the Carolingian and the Merovingian. It was around about this time, according to this book. I don't know if it's right or not, but it was something. And there was a big thing about the year 1000 at the time. There was this. They used to call it. Well, they call it millenarianism, where there's this sort of theory of the end times. We had it with the year 2000, and there was a similar process with the year 1000 that this was going to be, like the second coming or whatnot. And I think that was maybe used as an excuse why this piece of history was sort of shrunk. Sort of messing with the timeline for political expedience at that moment, to take advantage of this millenarianism.
Yeah. And I think when you look at that, I mean, you see that as a constant in especially fundamentalist politics, but it dates back to Zoroaster and Zoroastrianism and the idea of Zoroaster. He said there was a beginning and there would be an end, and he's the one that basically laid out this dialectic of end times, and if there was a beginning, there has to be an end, and that kind of process through into Judaism, into the 6,000-year calendar, into Christianity, and all the modern machinations of the American, support of Israel.
I mean, how long-standing is that sort of support? How far back does it go?
Yeah, when you look at Rockefeller and the introduction of like a good day's work into the American, mindset in regard to creating good factory workers, I think that there was also a push at that time when you look at the Rothschilds going in and basically, basically buying the land and setting up the state of Israel. And there's a whole, it's quite interesting when you get into all that information.
You mentioned like the good day's work. It kind of reminds me of the school system as well, because Jordan Peterson keeps talking about this. Have you noticed this as well? About this Prussian system that's been inherited. Are you familiar with this, Robby?
Oh, yeah. So if you go back into after the 30-year war, basically they had the idea of they created a school system where it was essentially school to military pipeline. And they kind of, at the time, you had some of the Calvinists coming in, and they were high upstanding. So they instilled all these values of morals into the culture, and kind of like, do your best in all that you can do. And kind of that kind of tied in with the school system, which created this great military system that, the Kaiser basically took hold of the reins. And then when you had, what was it? Dewey and Mann here in the United States, they were working for the Department of Education at the time, and they actually went over to Prussia, and they saw the system and how everyone was so astute and dedicated, and how that translated into the military. And there was a scientist over there called Wundt, and he had the first model laboratory classroom. And he essentially was like literally keeping track of the kids' breaths, keeping track of, as far as for anxiety and different factors. And they were like, scientifically tuning this mechanism of the model classroom that Dewey and Mann brought back with the Prussian education system at the time. And then once it got to America, they kind of overlaid the Skinner box, which was B.F. Skinner. So it's the idea of, if you're within that classroom environment, you always have this overarching authority, which basically leads to intergenerationally leads to the idea of appeal to authority. So no one has a sense of their own sovereignty, and essentially they're always looking to the experts, or the mediators of the information, to know what is right or what is wrong, which I think is what led in a lot of cases to the malinformation that everyone took in through mass media in regard to the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, when I wasn't really familiar with this Prussian school genesis. I always was. It was always linked to me to the sort of Victorian era and Industrial Revolution and factory workers. Like talk about the school bell being the factory bell. It's dinner break time or whatever. And uniforms, you wear school uniforms because it's squashing your individuality. It's about conforming, being part of a collective. One of the schools one of my kids goes to, their motto is "You're one of ours," which is
Yeah. Well, and my daughter.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
You're mine. Don't listen to that.
Yeah, my daughter, she works for Starbucks right now while she's going to college, and they don't call them employees; they call them what's the word?
Comrades.
Yes, it's something where it's an psychologically inclusive term, where they feel like they're part of the corporation itself. But that school to military pipeline that was in Prussia, once it got brought over here, and they've been downgrading the military systematically. But at the same time, that became the school to prison pipeline now here in the United States. It's quite the phenomenon.
There's some weirdness with that Starbucks logo as well, isn't it? A Medusa, or what's
Oh,
that?
yeah.
The demon
Well,
with the tentacles for legs.
Yeah, it's a Skyla is the name of that entity, and it basically is holding it's a two-finned mermaid, and she's holding herself, spread eagle, basically tempting the sailors, and it's and when you get into a lot of you were talking about the Merovingians and the Carolingians. The Carolingians came in and took over the Merovingians as a actor for the state of Rome, or the church at the time. And essentially those Merovingians, when you trace them back, a lot of people relate them to the line of Jesus.
Yeah.
But if you go back and you follow it back, as far as the long hair, they believe their long hair were antennas, and they could pick up information from the universe. But the original Merovingian, essentially a entity crawled out of the sea with but I think that was it was more octopus, but it was half human, half sea entity, and they bred with that, and that was what produced the line of the Merovingian kings.
That sounds like fish people, like Oannes.
Yeah,
or
like the Dagon, or
sorry.
the Dagon.
Oh right, that's in Africa, isn't it? Is that the tribe who they noticed that Sirius, or according to their folklore, their mythology, Sirius is a binary system, but it wasn't confirmed until modern optics were able to.
Right.
Is that right?
And they knew about Sirius B and Sirius C long before modern optics were involved. So, and that's where you get the whole Syrian, kind of alien kind of mythos theme, kind of that runs through some of the UFO, ufology.
Do you think our system might be a binary? Because it seems that the more they look at different systems, ours is an outlier in that it isn't a binary as far as we know. Do you think it could be one, or maybe it was in the past?
Well, I think that Sirius is actually the binary star that we kind of swing around. And when you even going back to Egypt, when they talked about Set and the black sun, or the sun behind the sun, there's some relation to one of the stars that's in Sirius being that, essentially Set himself. So yeah, it's a long, like, mythological kind of thing that's kind of woven through history, you know.
Yeah, the Egyptians called it the Sothic cycle, or we call it the Sothic cycle, that the
Mm,
Egyptians worship, well, not worship, but they revered the Sirius, the
the
rising of
serious
Sirius.
cycle.
And I think it coincided with the Nile flooding. Maybe that was part of
Right,
the reason
right.
for it. But yeah,
Well,
I had this thought that Sirius could be our binary, and I posted this in the Brothers of the Serpent Discord channel and got fucking
mhm.
laughed out of there. You
Yeah,
fucking idiot. Yeah. But the joke's on them. My Discord account got terminated. So, it's one of them, innit? Never mind.
yeah. They keep just shutting us off everywhere we go.
Have you had any issues with censorship, Robbie? Because, I mean,
Oh
you do
yeah.
your own podcasts and stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, back if you want to go back in the early 2000s, it was right after 9/11. I used to have a show or a website called News of the Day, and I basically would compile it, kind of like the Drudge Report, essentially. And I would compile stories and pair them together. And I had Bob, the guy that they worship there in the Discordians, and I had him in different outfits with different hats and different pipes and looking like a pirate and looking like he's in the Caribbean. And I would, like, basically have the different Bobs with all the different stories tied together. And it got to the point I was getting upwards of 120,000 hits a day on that.
Wow.
And I woke up one morning and they had hacked it and put an Al Qaeda training site on it. So, so
Whoa.
I kind of shut that down. And
I,
but I've had various things, my friend, a couple of my friends, they're like, man, back when you were on, what was it? The old MySpace days, you know, that, that was like some outlandish shit going around back then. So, but I think when you look at these message boards that kind of come through DARPA and kind of, I think that they're testing grounds almost for, to see who's going to respond, reply, propagate, just to kind of pigeonhole different people into different, status. To basically, you've heard about the whole system of, red, yellow, and green, and you're either marked, it's like during COVID, um, I don't know, I have like half a thousand followers on Twitter, and when I would post stuff, I would get one or two views,
yeah.
and then that kind of went up for a while, and then now it's back down. I only get like 10 or 11 views with over, I've got like 600 followers now, but it's just like, what's the World Economic Forum, the girl there that Elon Musk brought in, and she's like, freedom of speech, but also freedom of reach. So you
Yeah.
can say whatever you want, but it's whether or not they're going to allow it to propagate through the machinations of the system, you know?
Yeah, I would happily give up social media tomorrow if I didn't have this
Mm,
podcast. I would have no social media presence whatsoever. I mean, it's
yeah.
different for you because you're pirating your wares, and you want to
Mm.
use it's a tool, isn't it, for
Oh, yeah.
driving, getting people to see
Well,
your stuff.
so on Instagram, when I would post a story before COVID, I was getting upwards 400 to 600 views on the story a day. And then when COVID hit, it went down to like 15 to 25.
Mm.
So I noticed a huge difference there. And I think this is just because, as far as free speech, I believe that it should be uninhibited on all levels. So, I'm consistently probably saying stuff that's frowned upon as far as that freedom of reach, you know. And so my wife even says that she doesn't see anything I post. If she wants to see it, she has to go to my page to look at it. It's to that point.
Adam Curry says that about his wife. His wife has to go and
Look at this stuff.
search out his tweets. Yeah, the algorithm just will not share it.
Yeah,
Have you
yeah.
ever thought about setting up a new page and seeing if you know almost having like like a personal presence, and then a second page where you sort of play by their rules and try and keep it strictly,
So Instagram, I do a lot of more feel good kind of stuff, sharing what's going on personally. Facebook, I only share art, and then on Twitter, I talk publicly and politically. So I kind of already do that.
Right.
But I wonder if I set up like if I just went and got a burner phone and set up a completely new anonymous kind of page, like if it would make a difference.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't know if they're even tracking your IPs and stuff,
Oh yeah, I know. A friend of mine, he was in Facebook jail all the time and getting booted off Twitter all the time, and so he basically removed his accounts. And he recently got married, and his wife changed her last name to his last name, and they put her in Facebook jail. Yeah.
Wow. We out here even posting anything.
Right.
Oh my God.
So you got to wonder. I mean, and we know that all this stuff, as far as from its beginning, was essentially set up by the military-industrial complex. And you have, what was it? That the program that they stopped the day before they instituted Facebook. And it's like now you have Zuckerberg, and they're putting all these virtual glasses out that they want you to wear around that are going to film things. So it's kind of like back when Pokemon Go, they were trying to get everybody to go to the Baptist church there that has all the people that are causing problems. And like one of the characters that you could get there if you went there was one of the higher rated characters. So it's like they're directing people into places where they can get video intel, and then you have Five Eyes, and it's just and what was it? Canada just announced that every podcaster now has to register. So they're and it's only state approved media sources that are going to be allowed now in Canada.
I was reading about this announcement. Now, as far as I understand it, I could be completely wrong. There's a revenue cutoff, so I think it's only. It's not podcasts. It's I think it's like streaming businesses that have a certain amount in revenue. But what we've seen in the last few years is a lot of these networks coming along and buying up podcasts, like Spotify did with JRE.
Yeah.
And there are these sort of podcast houses that come in and sweep up independent shows and put them under their umbrella. So they might be. Thing is, show me a podcast that makes money. Other than like No Agenda. They obviously make money. I guess in those trigonometry boys do all right through advertising and sponsorship and whatnot. They obviously they have employees, don't they? So they must be making some money. But I mean, the vast majority, I think we will fly under the radar, you and us, Robbie, because we're independent, and I don't think they can stop RSS technically. I think,
right.
And I think people will find ways around it, even if it means. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say now with Adam Curry and podcasting 2.0 and they're putting some of it on the blockchain, so it's unalterable, and it's. I would like to think that the fire in the minds of men will outdo anything that they can bring at us. It's like, what was it over in Africa? They just had to stop using their CBDC because nobody was using it, and they were all using yams and matchsticks for money, like wampum,
Wow.
So that one, I think
was it Nigeria?
I think it might be Nigeria. They just dropped their CBDC because they couldn't get the population to use it. So, I think that these and it's like, you go back into the Hindu texts, and they talk about as the system increases in complexity, so do the problems of the system increase in complexity. And that's why any system that's built to supersede the natural world or the natural system can do nothing but fail.
Tell me about it. That's what's happened to our podcast tonight. It's
over
got
recent weeks.
it's been getting more and more complex over the last
Yeah.
6 years.
Yeah.
To the point where it's now just regularly failing.
It doesn't work anymore.
No, we're gonna have to go back to basics. We're gonna have to go back to audio only. You know, well, when we do that anyway. But
I was going to say we've got a question, haven't we?
oh, go on. Have you found it?
I found a
Is this the
question.
question from Sam.
From Sam, yeah. He says, I would be interested in his opinion on how art represents the spiritual state of a civilian.
Civilization.
Is that what I was supposed to say?
Yeah, start again.
Of a civilization.
Civilization. The art we have today is void of any spirituality or sacred energies. And that represents the current state of society worldwide.
I believe that's correct. And I think that's been a long-standing thing that they've been putting in place. When you go back and you look at the old masters and, like, you know, you read Goethe and look at the etchings that are in the old books from the 1800s and the 1700s, and going back to, you know, even Michelangelo and Raphael, as far as the installation of beauty and the divine subliminal machinations that supersede reality. You know, it's always been this idea of timeless beauty within the spectrum of art. But then you look at after World War II and the machinations of the OSS and the CIA, and basically going in and infiltrating the artistic movements, you know, going back into Dadaism and Surrealism, and looking at how like not Kandinsky, who was it, the drunk there that would just dump paint on the Pollock. Yeah, and there's, you know, it's pretty much an open secret now at this point, being declassified, that you know, intelligence agencies went in and made the art more ugly. Brought in the ideas of cubism, you know, as far as the first piece of Dada art being taking the toilet urinal and turning it on its side, and he just signed his name on it. You know, that I'm sorry, but that's, you know, he didn't do anything to participate in the active force, you know, of creation. You know, it's so they've consistent, and as they can debase the art and debase the music. And it goes back to Plato and talking about the idea of changing just, you know, the chord that the music is played in can basically bring down an entire society. So, you know, these are tools that are in the toolbox of the people that are basically governing. You know, government is to govern or to steer, and mente is the mind. So, you know, the government, that's their, and if they do it correctly, then you can have a beautiful and prosperous, you know, culture. But when materialism and when the machinations of mammon or money basically supersede, you know, and then you have this mysterious death cult that kind of underlies the whole blackmail system. You know, it gets really into some dark machinations as far as the slow, gradual shifting of the cultural norms, you know.
It's funny we're talking about this. I've just started reading this book, The Decline of the West by Oswald Spengler.
Yeah, I read that.
You've read it?
Yeah.
Cracky. It's hard, but it's wild. It's not like anything I've ever read before. But he talks about the difference between culture and civilization, and he makes the analogy with Greece and Rome, quite like you were saying just then. Whereas ancient Greece was a culture which evolved or devolved into a civilization, which was Rome, which was imperialism, capitalism. Right. Everything was about money. The art was shallow, bread and circuses. And you think, it's just like today, man. We've gone from the Renaissance and Michelangelo to The Only Way is Essex and Big Brother on TV and Taylor Swift and Tracy Emin. Is it Tracy Emin, the modern artist?
I was just thinking about the messy bed. Yeah,
he messed up her bed and he called it art. But there are holdouts though, aren't there? People who are trying to do things right.
There are people that are intrinsically interested in the beauty that the past has to offer. And the more you go in and read history, the more you realize that once empire takes control, it's plastic machinations. It's just all, yeah, and that slowly leads to the degradation and the downfall. And I think that the artist in society, honestly, is probably one of the key factors, that well, and it's like, what was it with Obama there, and they got Shepard Fairey, to basically do Obama's poster. And they kind of, I mean, from what I understand, he didn't make a lot off that, but they kind of took his style and had him do the Obama poster. And Shepard Fairey says then they kind of just left him to the wind, and and Shepard Fairey, now he's determined to use his art to create more positive, because that style in itself, when you look at it, it goes back to the communist the posters of the time, as far as the propaganda posters. And so now he's trying to use that in a positive light, protecting the sacred and moving forward to more peaceful means. And I mean, it's politics is a beast just devouring itself.
That
So
that Obama poster, was it the one? It said Obama at the bottom, and it was like a blue red, like a negative.
yeah, blue red, and then I think it said hope at the bottom.
Yeah,
Hope, that was it. I'm just looking because in the corner of our room here, I've got 4 posters in that style. One of Plato, one of Marcus Aurelius, one of Genghis Khan, and one of Rick Mayall.
Yeah, Rick
who's
Mayall.
a comedian.
It was ubiquitous, that design, wasn't it, around that time when he got voted in?
Yeah.
It was everywhere, wasn't it?
Images are so powerful, aren't they, Robbie?
Right. They are. And I don't know, a lot of artists, when I was in school, a lot of because I was in school on and off for like college on and off for like 10 years. I kept just going on Grateful Dead tour and Fish tour and doing all these things that I went out to enjoy myself. But I would talk to some of the younger kids coming in, and I'd be like, well, why are you going? And they would always be like, I want to make a lot of money. And I was like, you're a fool, because artists don't make money. I mean, kind of when I went into art, I took the ideal that I was going to be working till the day that I die, to heart. And I will be. I have, I don't have anything in retirement. Basically, my retirement is my stack of prints that I have, that will slowly, be dealt out while I'm still within this mortal coil, but it's like, the artist, and you have those that go into it, seeking fame and fortune, and then you have those that go into it strictly from the aspect of just intrinsically wanting to participate in the creative aspects, so I've kind of, everything I've done on a shoestring, and I kind of just, I'm confident in the fact that life will take care of itself, as long as I'm, in a safe place. And kind of somehow I've been doing this 35 years now,
Wow.
And, yeah, and as far as the art itself, in certain ways, I mean, initially I was doing, I was DJing, and I was doing like flyers for the shows I was DJing at, and then I moved into the kind of the music scene, and I started doing fine, and then bands started asking me to do art. And finally, when I had a kid and I had bills to pay, I was like, any work I can do, I'm gonna do. So that kind of turned me into, basically, I do work for clients now, is mostly what I do on commission. And but ideally, I'm also kind of moving outside of that system, and I'm going more into the esoteric philosophies, and kind of starting to deal more with the aspects of the sublime. rather than, just trying to make images, you know.
Really? Right. So you're trying to
Yeah.
incorporate, rather than creating work on demand kind of thing, you're trying to create is this for yourself? Create for yourself work that
Yeah.
incorporates the esoteric?
Right. And basically, I mean, I'm still reliant upon commission work. I've got
Right.
jobs booked out now into the new year, and I'm cranking those out whenever, life will allow. But also, I don't know, were you aware that I finished a book?
No.
Um, no, so I wrote this book over COVID because over COVID, basically, I had all my jobs pulled.
Yeah.
I lost like 8 jobs in 1 week, and I had 0 work. And so I basically sat down and wrote this book about the ancient pre-biblical character of Nimrod.
Oh
And
wow! One of
oh
my
yeah,
favorites.
yeah. So, but it's called Nimrod, the first Skinwalker. And
Oh, excellent.
yeah, and I found this thread, dealing, getting into the Jewish rabbis and getting into the biblical texts, and basically, I found this thread of Nimrod getting a hold of the skin of Adam, and basically putting it on at the age of 22 and becoming Nimrod the Great, and that's when he ruled over Mesopotamia, and basically ruled over what was it, 6 lands and 7 seas, and so I kind of create the set and setting, and then I weave this narrative through it. So I'm working on the illustrations for that now, and the book is at the editor. It's halfway done being edited. And yeah, I can show you the sketch I'm working on right now. This is the
Yeah,
one
let's
that
see it. Yeah.
is.
Oh,
Wow.
right. We've got a bit of Tree of Life, bit of Kabbalah. Oh, pentagram.
Yeah.
Is it a pentagram? That? Hang on. It's got
There are
6
Yeah,
sides.
Well, within the
6
Star of
points.
David, there's an upside down and a right side up pentagram.
wow.
If you
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
get in there.
And a bit of
So
Tree
the
of Life
blue,
stuff going on there.
yeah, kind of like the tree of life. Let me see over here, and the splitting of the sexes, and kind of being handed down, on high.
Oh, yeah. And
So I'm
the
kind of
Alpha and the Omega up there as well.
oh yeah, the alpha and the omega. So I'm kind of basically, and it's kind of something I've been doing intermittently for years. But I'm just realizing that as I get older, um, that I need something. I mean, you figure a lot of the concert posters and stuff like that, it's a very kind of niche kind of thing. So you have people, that like I have all these different posters from all these different shows, and a lot of people are like, "Well, I wasn't at the show, so I have no interest in it." So it's kind of creating the art without the tie to any specific, again, back to creating timeless beauty is kind of where I'm working from.
Just going back to Nimrod.
Yeah.
Was it Nimrod who was involved with the building of the Tower of Babel?
Yeah, and there was actually 2 Nimrods. There was Nimrod the Lesser and Nimrod the Greater, which you yeah, I know, right? It gets confusing. But nonetheless, Nimrod the Greater is the younger Nimrod that basically took control over Mesopotamia, where and he ruled after the fall of the Tower of Babel, right? But it was Nimrod the Lesser that was actually behind the building of the Tower of Babel. And if you really follow that back and tie all the different tie-ins, I am under the impression that it was Thoth or Tahuti from Egypt. And it's kind of, you have one line that goes from Osiris to Horus, which is basically based around kingship, and then you have the other machinations of Thoth and handing that divine sacred knowledge down, becoming Hermes Trismegistus, and into all the miscellaneous mystery school kind of stuff.
What do you right? Well, 2 questions. Do you think that this Nimrod is a historical figure? And if so, when was he about? When was he alive?
Yeah, it's interesting because when you start really overlapping all these characters, because like Nimrod the Elder ties back in with Thoth or Tahuti, and Thoth was the one that was said to have created the writing system,
Yeah.
which also lines up with, who do you have? Um, Inky. You have Cadmus coming into Britannia. You have, even going back to the fallen angels, and it was the angel Penemu, who
Oh,
was the one that taught sweetness and hotness and the mixing of colors, and was the one that taught writing to humankind. So I think there's a vast, multi layering of these characters culturally that kind of cross pollinated through many cultures and the mystery schools, and how those kind of traveled with the merchants and the warrior class.
yeah. I mean, there must have been an original person, man or a woman, who invented writing.
Mm.
A lot of
Yeah.
it. I mean, some. I mean, I guess like a classical historian would say maybe it was someone from Phoenicia who
Mm.
invented the alphabet.
Well, some of the oldest Proto-Sumerian, um, figures they found are actually in the Transylvania region.
Right.
So yeah, it's the whole writing, and well, and then you even have, as far as the Pillars of Lamech, where they were, using the language of the angels, and basically wrote down the seven sacred sciences, pre-flood, that kind of were dug up after the fact. And what was it they say, that after they found it, Babylon was re-inhabited and the worship of the gods continued. So it's definitely an interesting little rabbit hole to go down.
I absolutely love this biblical stuff, this Old Testament stuff. I mean, did you, as far as researching your book and coming up with your Nimrod hypothesis, did you rely on the biblical canon, or did you look at the apocryphal texts?
Yeah, I looked at the biblical canon. I looked at the apocryphal. I went into the Hebrew rabbis. I
Right.
went into the Sumerian, the Hindu texts, and I kind of tie a lot of these different stories. As far as the narrative, I tie a lot of these characters together and show the similarities. And like, what was it, the as far as Noah, in the Bible, it says that he was, pure enough to be able to, he was the last of the pure line, basically, after they wiped out the Nephilim, and then he came over and reestablished, civilization. Whereas if you read the Babylonian texts, it says that Noah was actually the preserver of the hybrid line of the fallen ones. So, and the Babylonians decry him, for planting the first vineyard, and bringing about the drunkenness that precipitated. So it's yeah.
When's this book gonna be out, and how do I get a signed copy?
Yeah, when it comes out, we'll definitely make it happen. Basically, it's just a matter of the editor going
Right.
through, and he's got about 15 chapters left to do on it, and then I'm working on the illustrations and working on a cover for it.
Right.
Yeah, so it's still. I mean, so far I'm going on 4 years getting this thing together.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
3 years putting it all together, and now we're going on a year since it's been at the editor, and I'm getting the illustrations done.
What are you going to do
So
for distribution? Are you going to just take care of it yourself? Are you looking to get on Amazon or somewhere like that? Or how will that work, do you
yeah,
think?
I'll have it on Amazon for
All
sure.
right.
And then I'm also looking at doing an audiobook format, so that'll be on like Audible. And then as far as the publishing, I'm self-publishing. It'll just be another piece of art that I have out there, that's with me when I'm going around showing my wares, you know.
I can't wait for that. What's
Mm.
what do you reckon what sort of size of book do you think is it going to be?
Yeah, I think the first edition's probably going to be like a pocket-sized pulp fiction kind of,
Right.
just a pulp paperback, basically,
Yeah.
something that's easily, assimilated.
And keep the cost
So
down as well, won't it?
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So
Can't wait for that.
I was just thinking, I was wondering if you're into Jung at all, Robbie.
Carl.
Carl,
yeah, I've read a good bit of Jung.
I'm
Yeah,
just wondering if
yeah.
you've ever read The Archetypes, that big textbook.
Um,
And I suppose what was coming into my mind as you've been talking, and talking about the sublime and all the rest of it is, I suppose, what intrigued me was the idea of mandalas and what he used them for, and what he felt they represented in somebody. I'm just wondering, about your kind of thoughts around that, if you have any, if you're familiar.
Yeah, as far as the idea of using art to center yourself within the subconscious and the machinations that bring forth, and I mean, and especially when you get into Jung, you're talking about a lot of shadow work and kind of drawing on it. Well, and that goes back to Nimrod and Osiris, and it was the idea of turning the man on his head, or Joseph Campbell with the monomyth, as far as you leave where your common like vernacular that you exist within, and you go out into this great void and you have this experience, and then you bring those lessons back. So it's kind of like the idea of learning from the chaos and kind of letting those lessons bring peace within yourself.
Mm.
um
That's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what he seemed basically was saying, wasn't he? As part of the archetypes, he used it in his therapy as a way for people to, like you say, make peace, I guess, with their unconscious or their unconscious desires. The other thing I
right,
suppose I found sort of fascinating about it was how he linked it, to the collective unconscious and the repeated symbology, the serpents, the suns, the stars, the trees, all the rest of it. It just automatically came out of people over and over and over again. And he said that,
yeah.
that they didn't sort of see each other's work and all the rest of it, but it's quite interesting how that just comes out of people, basically.
Right. And you have to almost wonder if there's some sort of a genetic memory of the
Mm.
people as a whole through all the eons, and kind of how we have certain imagery. I mean, because, you're talking about the serpent, you're talking about the sun or the moon. These things have been like instilled in the minds of humanity through all of our existence within, the turnings of the earth realm. It's kind of like chickens, when they're out milling around the yard, and they're like little baby chicks. If a hawk will fly over, they'll immediately go down on their hunches and kind of to hide out, because they know instinctively, what the predator is without knowing what the predator is. And kind of also gets into the whole monarch project, as far as the Nazis and the idea of how do these monarch butterflies through successive generations migrate back, to the place where their ancestors were born. Yeah, it's definitely, and the Akashic record. And I did hear I did hear something about Russian cosmonauts at one point, that after they sent them outside of the magnetosphere of the Earth, that they lost all their memories. And when they came back, they were like a blank slate. So yeah, so there's some argument to be made that the magnetosphere of the Earth itself is the cohesive cosmological memory of the species.
Yeah, Schumann frequency. Once you escape that
Mm.
Schumann frequency, you just go. It's like
You-
Men in Black getting the zip. You're
Yeah.
getting zoomed in the face. This kind of reminds me of Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance theory. This sort of like Jung called it the collective unconscious. He did experiments with mice where there was mice in mazes or rats in different parts of the world. And once the first rat figured out this maze, other members of this species in different continents would figure out the maze quicker. And it just defies, you know, unless you're a space-time pirate, defies space-time, defies the laws that we call them, although I think it's some bullshit. The sort of laws of physics that we're so wedded to, and we just cannot. And going back to Spengler again, he was talking about this shit 150 years ago about these laws that are a product of civilization and our modern thinking, and probably our scales over our eyes when it comes to understanding this reality or plane that we exist on.
Yeah, yeah. Now, have you heard of spooky action at a distance?
Oh no, what's this?
Are you aware of that? So Einstein basically did this experiment with rabbits where he would take the newborn rabbits away from the mother. And then they initially did it in the next room, and they would have the mother rabbit on a video feed, and they would jab the baby rabbit with a pin, and the mother rabbit would react. Right. And so they basically took the rabbits further and further away. And, you know, Einstein postulated that, you know, there was this thing, spooky action at a distance, where we were essentially all interconnected, faster than the speed of light, faster than any quantum understanding that we have now. And it's just something that's sitting there in the books that, you know, some people hear about and some people don't.
Yeah, it's like quantum entanglement, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Particle physicists reckon they've discovered this as well. Like, despite whatever distance, the certain particles are connected together
somehow. Yeah, it's
somehow.
Very strange, isn't it?
Well, we don't know. We have no idea. Makes zero sense. But it's like going back to what you said before. It's like we're all part of the same existence, you know. But there's something like Jung or the other guy who was into the Oedipal mothers, Freud. Freud talks about the ego and stuff like that. We all have these egos, these sort of personas. We think of ourselves as individuals, don't we? But we're all connected. There's, you know, I mean, there could be ether. There could be ether in between us all.
Don't matter.
Yeah. What do you think about ether, Robbie?
It was a fundamental aspect of people's reality up until the 1800s, you know? But, you know, when you look at modern physics, the fact that there's more space between the atoms that make up solid things, you know, and getting back into like, you ever see Buckaroo Banzai?
I thought you were going to say Buck Rogers.
No. Buckaroo Banzai, he actually, in that, if you watch that film, they create this car with some sort of morphic field on it where he's actually able to drive into solid objects and exist within them and see, and there's like entities within them moving around. And so, you know, it's a huge question as to what this reality actually is.
Yeah, we're more nothing than something. There's a
weird thing there.
There's a great stat that I heard, I don't know, 20 years ago or something, and it's if you took all the atoms of every human who's ever lived and took out the empty space and just compressed the atomic weights, it would fit inside of a softball.
Yeah.
That's how empty we are, especially my head. I've got a particularly empty head.
I know.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing. The more you get into these subject matters and the more you start tracing down these different, you know, ideas, the more you realize that really nobody knows what the case is. It's kind of, you know, and they've built this established thing they call science that's strictly based around physical observance and repeatable patterns within, you know, the machinations of the natural world, but that discounts all the spaces in between and the higher levels of energetic forms and, you know, all the possibilities that lie within that.
Yeah, and there's the whole question of consciousness and the question of generation of the universe. You know, I got taught when I was a kid, oh, it's the Big Bang. Big Bang happened, and here we are. It's like, whoa, what happened before that?
Yeah.
What did the philosophers call it? An uncaused first cause? Is that what we're
Yeah.
talking about? You know, this isn't a suitable answer. Go back to the drawing board, please. We need more information.
Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
traditionally, all the ancient cultures have dealt with this, In Egypt, they existed in the Nuit, I believe it was called, where essentially it was a space of nothingness, and there was like these bullfrogs around this void of chaos that, an effulgent beam of light or a Lucas kind of shot out of, and that was, where the first mind came out of, and you get into the Sumerians have, similar tales, and if you trace the Big Bang back, it actually does go into Judaism. I want to say in the 1600s when it was first written about.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah. So it's definitely who knows though. I mean, the Buddhists say that it's all illusion, it's all burning around us, it's all, and if it is all illusion and it is all, us creating our own reality and reality bubbles as far as your reality bubble, bumping up against my reality bubble, and we're kind of, well, do you know about the slit experiment?
The double slit,
Where
is
the
that the particles and waves, is it?
Right,
You
and
have to.
and basically, when there was an observer,
Mm.
they all would go to one side, whereas when the observer wasn't there, they would be evenly distributed. So they postulate that we, with our minds, are actually, affecting how physical, reality manifests itself depending upon how we're viewing it, you know?
Photons. We can control the photons just by looking
Yeah.
at them.
Madness.
It's
And the
wild.
light itself is a wave and a particle at the same time, and it doesn't turn into something until, that thing is realized, and there has to be an it's the whole, "If a tree falls in the woods, does it make a noise?"
Yeah.
You know?
Do you ever get frustrated with our modern culture and how
Oh, yeah, yeah.
the vast majority of people that you meet in day-to-day life are just they're just sort of preoccupied with bullshit constantly.
Yeah. But that's the whole thing, when you're brought into the world and then they slowly, like we were talking about, have taken away the idea of the sacred, and they've debased the art and they've debased the music and they brought it all down to a materialist commercial culture, where they want you to subscribe to everything,
Yeah.
I mean, it creates the idea that, the human is nothing more than a soft machine, which when you go back and like William Burroughs wrote The Soft Machine, you go back into like, what was it, Lilly, and he was trying to take minds and basically wipe them and
And
have a tabula rasa,
jerk off
you know?
dolphins as well.
Yeah, jerk off, man. But if you read the programming and reprogramming of the human biocomputer, he specifically talks in that about basically reprogramming children. You know, so it's and he even says in there at one point, he says that some of the stuff that they did, he cannot openly talk about because of his fear of retribution from modern society. You know,
Oh, that sounds dark.
yeah,
Mm.
that does sound dark, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, you just I don't know. As far as society in itself, I mean, when I go out and because I just got back, I was on like a 2.5 month trip, and I just drove around the country and saw people I loved and kind of hung out at different festivals. And people in general are absolutely beautiful. They want to have a good time. They want to laugh. They want to show you the things in their life that are beautiful. Like they want to like take you and cook for you and take care of you and like and that's the individual, where we see the beauty in the world, and we want to show each other that vibration of love, which supersedes all. But when you start getting into collective bodies that build upon themselves, that
Tribes.
are collected, yeah, and the two-party system, and it just and dualism in general. It's it's yeah, it's concerning.
Yeah. Well, we've just ticked over an hour, Robbie, and I'm conscious of the fact that we were late starting because of the technical snafus.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed our chat, Robbie. I'd like to do it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
And and especially the book. I need to get the book, and I'd like to delve into that with you. 'Cause I love me old
Nice.
biblical history and Old Testament stuff.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating.
I as well.
Yeah, I've got your website in the show notes, and I think I put your Twitter. Is there anywhere else that you'd like to send anyone to?
Yeah, if anybody wants to check out my Meta Mindcast, METTA Mindcast, all one word. Basically, I'm just taking the interviews that I've done on other shows like this and throwing those up there as they come available. And then like every fifth one is a deep dive where I do like an hour. I'm basically going through and creating an esoteric cosmological history of planet Earth.
Wow.
And so yeah, like every fifth one, it'll say recordings on, and that just kind of gets into some of the stuff I've kind of been reading about. And yeah, but basically, I just I'm out here and throwing some art out in the world every once in a while, and kind of just trying to create a good life with my wife, and kind of be happy as a person can be, in this existence. So
That's all any of us want, isn't it?
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
most of us. There's the odd, Schwab who wants world domination,
yeah.
whatever. But most of us are we're simple beings, aren't we?
Simple
We don't
beings,
need
yeah.
we don't need much.
No.
But
Right.
yeah, Robbie, this has been great. Stay on the line for us for 1 minute while we play ourselves out. It's been a pleasure. Links are in the show notes as always for Robbie's website and whatnot. And for those of you watching live, we shall see you very soon for part 2. Do some news.
Yeah.
Got some great Trump clips this week.
Oh,
He's back. He's
A
back with a
treat.
bang. The orange man, yeah.
okay.
Right. Sayonara. See you soon, folks. 10 minutes, roughly.